You're lost right now, aren't you? Not physically lost, but lost in your life. You're doing all the right things, checking all the boxes, but deep down, you feel like you're walking in circles. Sarah felt the same way, except she wasn't walking in circles anymore. She had hit a wall, hard, and in the rubble of her old life, she found something most people never find. A real compass, not the kind that points north, but the kind that points to who you really are. Stay with me, because what happened next will challenge everything you think you know about finding your way. Sarah was 38 years old, and on paper, her life was perfect. Senior executive at a major marketing agency in the heart of the city. A beautiful marriage, at least from the outside. Her social media was filled with vacation photos, fancy restaurants, and happy couple selfies. But Sarah knew the truth. Every morning when the alarm went off, the first thing she felt was fear, a hollow fear. There was no reason for it, but it was there, getting heavier every single day. At work, she wrote strategies that other people wanted. At home, she lived the life her husband wanted. With her family, she tried to be the daughter they expected. But what did she want? She was afraid to ask herself that question because she didn't have an answer. For 15 years, she had been following someone else's compass. And now, her own compass had been unused for so long, she didn't even know where it was anymore. Everything changed on a Tuesday. At 9:30 in the morning, her boss called her into his office. "Sarah, this isn't an easy conversation. The company is restructuring. Your position no longer exists." 2 sentences, 12 years of career, gone. Sarah couldn't speak. Her hands were shaking as she left the office. She packed her things into a small cardboard box. 12 years fit into one box. When she got home, her husband David was sitting on the couch. The TV was on, but he wasn't watching it. He was holding an envelope. "Sarah, we need to talk." The envelope was from a divorce attorney. "I can't do this anymore," David said, avoiding her eyes. "You're never really here. Physically you're here, but you're absent. I haven't had a real conversation with you in 3 years. I want to be happy, Sarah. I think you do too." That night, Sarah sat in the bedroom in the dark. Her job was gone, her marriage was over, and now she realized, who was she? For 12 years, she had been a marketing director. For 15 years, she had been David's wife. For 38 years, she had tried to be the good girl. But who was Sarah? An empty question. Because there was no answer. The next 2 weeks were a blur. David left. Sarah could have stayed in the house, but she didn't want to. Everything felt like someone else's life. She moved to a small apartment, 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and too much silence. At night, she couldn't sleep. She would hold her phone and look at old photos. She looked happy in those photos, but she wasn't happy. She never had been. During the day, she watched TV, scrolled through job listings on LinkedIn, and ignored messages from friends asking, "How are you?" It was easier to type, "I'm fine, thanks," than to tell the truth. The truth was this: she was empty, completely empty. One day, while unpacking old boxes, she found an old compass her father had given her years ago. He'd given it to her the day he sent her off to university. "Always find your way," he'd said with a smile. Sarah picked up the compass. It was heavy, made of brass and wood, old and worn. She checked the needle. It wasn't moving. It was broken. Sarah suddenly started laughing. It wasn't hysterical, but it was a deep laugh. Her compass was broken, just like her life. And in that moment, sitting there in the middle of her empty apartment, something changed. Maybe the compass wasn't broken. Maybe it had never been pointing in the right direction. The next morning, Sarah woke up early. She didn't know why. She just woke up. It was still dark outside. She looked out the window. The city was quiet. For the first time in a long time, her mind was quiet too. And in that silence, she heard a question. It was her own voice, but a voice she hadn't heard in years. "What do you want, Sarah?" A simple question. But when she tried to answer, nothing came. What did she want? She didn't want a big career. She didn't want her old marriage. She didn't even want her old life. Then what? She looked at the compass, still sitting on the table with its broken needle. And she understood. For years, she had been following other people's compasses. Her father wanted her to be a businesswoman, so Sarah did marketing. Her mother wanted to see her married and settled, so Sarah got married. Society wanted success, so Sarah climbed. But she had never used her own compass. Because she didn't have her own compass, she had never made one. Sarah made herself a new rule, a simple rule. Do one thing every day. only because you want to. Not for anyone else, not for your resume, not for social media, just for yourself. On the first day, she bought a notebook and started writing. Who am I? She wrote at the top of the page. No answer came. She kept writing. What do I love? This was harder. She hadn't done anything she loved in a long time, she thought. What did she do as a child? She used to paint. She would paint for hours. Countryside, mountains, trees, places she'd never seen, places she imagined. The next day, she bought a cheap watercolor set. On Tuesday, she bought a brush. On Wednesday, she made her first painting. It was terrible. It looked like a child's painting. The colors bled together. The perspective was wrong. But Sarah didn't care, because for the first time in a long time, she felt something. A small thing, but something. Weeks passed. Sarah woke up at 6 every morning and painted. She didn't show anyone. She didn't post it on Instagram. She just did it. Then she found a small cafe. It was in a quiet corner near the bridge. She went there every afternoon and read, but not job listings. She read philosophy books, poetry, essays, things she hadn't read in years. One day, the waiter at the cafe approached her. "You're here every day," he said with a smile. "What are you reading?" "Marcus Aurelius," Sarah said. "Meditations?" "Ah, Stoicism," the waiter said. "Good for difficult times." Sarah looked up. The waiter was a young man, maybe 25, but there was something in his eyes, something like peace. "Are you going through a difficult time?" he asked. Sarah hesitated. Then she was honest. "I lost everything." The waiter nodded. "Me too," he said. 2 years ago. I had a good job, a fiancé, everything ended. At first, it felt like the worst thing, and then I realized I hadn't lost anything, because they were never mine. I was living the wrong life. When Sarah heard those words, something broke in her chest, in a good way. It was true. She hadn't lost anything. She had just let go of someone else's life. 3 months later, Sarah was still living in her small apartment. She still hadn't found a new job, but she had changed. Every morning when she looked at herself in the mirror, she saw someone different. She looked more tired, but more alive. Her eyes were different. For the first time, she recognized herself. She continued to paint, and slowly she got better. Still not perfect, but it was hers. One day, the owner of the local cafe came over and asked, "Do you paint?" "I'm looking for some art to hang on the wall." Sarah hesitated. "I'm not a professional." "Doesn't matter," the owner said. "Is it real?" "Yes, it's real." "Then I want it." Sarah hung her first painting in that cafe. She earned 50 lira. It wasn't much. But when Sarah held that money, she cried, because that was the first money she'd ever earned by following her own compass. 6 months later, Sarah started working freelance at a graphic design studio, not full-time, but as much as she wanted, because in the mornings she painted. One day, an old friend called. "Sarah, I miss you. How are you? Is everything okay?" Sarah stopped. She thought for a moment. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Everything is still uncertain. I still don't know exactly what I'm going to do." "God, I'm so sorry," her friend replied. "No," Sarah said, smiling. "It's a good thing. For the first time, being lost doesn't feel bad." That night, Sarah picked up the old compass again. The needle still wasn't moving, still broken. But she didn't want to fix it anymore, because she didn't need a compass anymore. Where was north? She didn't know. But where was her own direction? She knew that, and for the first time, that was enough. So, what is the lesson we learn here? Here's the truth. First, being lost is not the end, it's the beginning. The moment you feel lost is actually the moment you realize you're on the wrong path. Most people never realize this. They follow someone else's map for a lifetime. You've realized it, that's a gift. Second, if the compass doesn't point in the right direction, don't fix it. Throw it away. Sometimes the tools we use in life society's expectations, family dreams, other people's definitions of success don't work for us. Don't try to fix them. Create your own. Third, small steps, if they're your own steps, are more powerful than giant leaps in someone else's direction. Sarah didn't have one big decision that changed her life. She just had the decision to do one thing for herself every day. A painting, a book, a coffee. Small, but hers. And most importantly, sometimes you need to lose everything to realize what you never had. Sarah's job, her marriage, her old life, they were never truly hers. And when everything collapsed, what remained underneath? she remained. For the first time, Sarah was Sarah. And that was the beginning.